Welcome to PATV. We're here with Marisa Vitali. She is the producer, writer, director, and star of a new film, a short documentary called Grace, which deals with the issue of addiction and opens a conversation in a very positive way. So Marisa, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah.
We were just able to see your short film. Thank you for bringing it to the Landlocked Film Festival.
Oh my God, it was such an honor to be able to screen here.
And people seem to really respond in a very positive way. Tell us a little bit about what started this project for you. It's such a fantastic project. What was the catalyst for it, and what made you want to continue it and see it through?
Sure. It's so interesting because the film is inspired by my personal story. I'm living in recovery. It's based on my story of heroin addiction. And so, throughout my recovery, I was always writing, kind of just, stream of consciousness, journaling. It was always a really important part of my recovery process for myself. And I was always writing my story of when I first started using, but I never knew how it ended because I felt like the journey, even to this day, is still continuing.
It's ongoing,
right?
For sure, absolutely.
It's a process.
It is.
So it always kind of stopped in the same place. And one night I was in an acting class and we got out very late in New York City, and our teacher kind of left us with a charge of like, everyone has a story to tell. Go out there and tell it. Stop waiting for the phone to ring for your next audition, but like go out there and tell your story.
So it was really because you were just doing what you wanted to do. You were in the middle of an acting class, and it just seemed a haphazard, just a random kind of thing. Everybody was assigned this job, but yet how many people were in that class? I would imagine a dozen or so. Do we have a dozen documentaries? No, we have yours. So you took that advice to heart.
Yes.
And you acted on it, which made a difference, because oftentimes we are told from friends or family or teachers or mentors, you should do this, you should do that, and we just let it go one ear and out the other. But you took it to heart, and that's what makes a difference, is acting on good advice. So as a consequence, continue.
I wrote the first story the next day because it just really resonated with me that night, just hearing it. And just like, yes. And I said to myself, I know I have a story to tell. I've been writing it, but I didn't know what the ending was. And so the next day, the story that came to me, it was actually the story of my first year clean. And I was like, oh, that's the story. That's the story that's going to change the conversation of addiction and recovery.
That's right.
I was like, that is it. And so I was all excited, but then I like put it in a drawer for 6 months because I was like, I'm an actress, I'm not a writer, so we're just going to leave it there.
Right. And there it sat for 6 months, but it wouldn't let you alone.
It was like always kind of in the back of my mind.
You need to do something with it.
Yes, exactly.
But you did let it rest. So it wasn't as though you were pushing it forward by your own will. You just let it rest, but then it was still in the back of your mind, in your subconscious. You at one point, then what was the catalyst for you to pull it out of the drawer and work on it again? Do you remember that?
Yes, I do. I was actually a reader for a casting director for a film about 2 heroin addicts, actually. And so I was auditioning the boyfriend, and I was the reader, and I got to work with them one-on-one. And one of the actors that came in, I was so moved by his work, and we had such a wonderful chemistry, and I said, oh, he reminds me of Trevor, the character that I wrote about.
Exactly.
And so for the first time, I felt drawn to share this script and this story with someone, and I asked him to meet for coffee, and I told him about the script and the character, and that's when he shared with me, he's like, oh wow, he's like, I'm starting a writing lab for actors.
Perfect.
Why don't you bring it, workshop it, see how it sounds?
Exactly.
So So I took his suggestions, always kind of, doing the next right thing and taking suggestions, because at the end of the day, I don't know.
Right. We are led by the people that are around us.
Exactly.
And we get good advice and we get bad advice, but we put it through our filter of truth, and we see, does this resonate with me? Does this sound true? Does this, can I see that this is going to have positive results? And then you acted on that as well.
Yes.
Oh,
and I was so scared and nervous the first time I had it read and got to hear the words.
That's your personal work.
But that period, and I workshopped it for about 6 to 8 months, was invaluable, because it was the first time I had ever really written anything. And I was really able to hear the words outside of my head. And all the actors were phenomenal, and they brought different nuances and really helped kind of
make it full,
shape it.
Make it
exactly.
full. Exactly.
Yeah. So it was really invaluable time.
A collaborative effect.
I was really surprised when we talked, earlier about the epidemic in high schools of heroin in New York and the area surroundings. I was shocked, to be honest. In the Midwest here, I mean, we're dealing, of course, with alcohol, marijuana, and even the e-cigarettes and the spice, which is bad enough. I mean, that we could have a whole conversation. But talk to me a little bit about heroin in high school. Shocking.
It's very shocking, especially on Long Island, where I grew up. It's a huge epidemic right now. And I was speaking with an educator from the Long Island School District, and she was saying that teachers are now certified to carry Narcan with them.
And that is for our viewers who don't know what that is. Narcan.
It's an opiate blocker.
Okay.
So if a student is overdosing, it's kind of you put it in the nose almost like a dropper, and you kind of give a squeeze, and it's almost like a nasal spray. So it's not an injection or anything. It's pretty foolproof. And you kind of give the pump of this nasal spray, and it blocks the opiate, and you have about like an hour window
to get them to the emergency room.
Exactly, to take action. So the fact that teachers I'm getting chills right now.
Yes,
I hear that. In high schools have been
it's a big deal
approved and trained.
For heroin kids. This is not a small thing.
And I think that's the biggest thing too, is that the stereotype and the nature of an addict, whether it be a heroin addict or a crystal meth addict or someone addicted to marijuana or whatever the addiction may be, or alcohol, is that the stereotype has changed. It's not the person standing on the corner with a needle sticking out of their arm.
It's me, it's our kids.
Exactly. It's your high school star football player. It's your PTA mom. It's the, back east, it's the CEO of your company, or maybe here it's, someone that has their own business and is very successful in the community.
And you'd never guess it.
Exactly. Yes.
And it's just a dark place to go. Of course, it looks exciting. It looks thrilling. There's a glorification of it, and it seems good. And then you try it, and it seems like it's a wonderful thing to begin with. I would imagine, but then that is not the whole story.
Exactly.
That is the path to a very dark place that is very difficult to come out of. But there is a path to get out of that, and that is what the story Grace really shows us. It really pulls back the veil on the fullness of truth to give people a full perspective of a human face and a human story of consequences of drug addiction. So tell us a little bit about this story. You workshopped it, you said, for 6 or 8 months, and then at that point, how did it go from a writer's workshop project? Here at the University of Iowa, we do have a writer's workshop
writing program.
Exactly, but this was really bringing it from that to you had a screenplay and then making it real. How did that happen?
Wow. Once again, I feel that I've been carried through the whole process. And I got to a point where I felt I personally had taken the script to as far as I could take it writing-wise. And I emailed it over to Alicia Reiner, who plays Bridget in the film.
She was fantastic.
Also in Orange is the New Black.
Yes, she is. Yes, she is.
So I sent it to her, and I was like, hey, can you just have a look over the script that I wrote? Let me know your thoughts. And I was really sending it over more for feedback or suggestions or kind of some notes of things I could tweak. And she emailed me back right away. She's like, oh my God, I love it. When are we shooting it? So at that point, I was like, oh, wow. Okay. I guess I'm making sure.
I will let you know. Can I get back to you on that? Give me 24 hours.
Totally. And then the ball pretty much started rolling from there, and started taking meetings with directors and producers and bringing people on board. And she introduced me to Chris Ordle, who directed the film. And his film, actually, Earthwork, had screened here with John Hawkes at the Landlocked Film Festival as well.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So there's all these connections.
Totally. Yeah. And so then he came on board, and we were really getting to work together, and then it just kind of grew from there. And I can share that, production was a difficult time for me. I'm primarily an actress. It was my first time I ever made a film. And I had a lot of moments of like, oh my God, what am I doing?
What did I do?
What am I doing? And all I really could do was pray and meditate, and I just kept turning it over, and I was just like, God, take this from me. Like, this is for you, a vehicle for you to be of service through me, through this story of grace, and like, do what you will with it, kind of thing.
And I
just had to remove myself from the equation, remove the ego, remove myself from the equation, and just be like, here, this is for you. And if I can save one person or help one person or touch one person with this film, I feel that my job as Marisa, bringing it back to, the me of the equation has been kind of fulfilled type of thing.
You have shared your story in a way that has brought truth and light.
Yes.
And and again, I love how you said that it wasn't about you. You removed your ego from it. It wasn't about, look at me. It's like, hey, people, let's look at this issue. And you gave it over, you said, to God. And we all know, most Americans believe in God. We all know that He's able to do so much more if we're willing to humble ourselves and be of use.
Get out of the way.
Just get me out of the way. You do what you want with this, and thank you for letting me be a small part of this bigger plan.
Exactly.
Because it does seem like it's so much bigger than you. It's
for
just
sure.
amazing to me how you.
I mean, you're such a key player, and in such a time in our earth, like you're saying, with kids. I mean, it's just. I looked at statistics this morning. You don't want to know them, you guys. You don't want to know where we're at in our country. So this is just extremely timely.
If for such a time as this.
I'm telling you what.
This is a story for such a time
as this. And this is just a beginning. I just have a feeling you are just on your way to produce more.
To produce more.
Thank you. Thank you. And, I just want to thank both of you for having me here today because I think that this conversation that we're having right here and right now is a perfect example of how we can make a difference.
I think so.
Is, being able to sit around and talk about recovery and addiction with no judgment, with compassion, with understanding rather than to be understood, and really with questions and information. And, you had questions about statistics, so you kind of pulled them up and educated yourself a little bit more about the epidemic. And I think that as a society and as a country, if we can do more of that and, sit around our kitchens on Friday nights having these kinds of conversations, whether it be about addiction or other issues that are coming up, I don't think there would be as much of a problem.
So, I think you're right. I think you're that is so true. Because I think a lot of times addiction, and we mentioned this earlier, it likes the secrecy.
Yes.
It gains power.
Yes, it breeds. Like a mold in the dark.
Exactly. It's in the dark and it multiplies.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you look and you think, whoa, how did this happen?
Yes.
But we just need to be forthright and honest. And I think one of the keys that you mentioned is so critical is to remove the judgment.
Yes.
Because who are we to judge other people's struggles and challenges? And you had mentioned earlier there may seem to be in some sectors of society people who are particularly judgmental might want to be able to label a person and say, oh, well, they had this issue, so I don't really think that I can, I don't know, they will just put some ridiculous judgment upon them. But that's not really
or
the
not
truth.
Deal with it. Like if you're a parent, and you just don't have a clue what to do. What would you tell parents like that have no idea but just found out what's going on? I think the first thing people do is they take them to a counselor or something like that. So maybe just your input, whatever that might be.
Oh yeah, that's a great question.
I think it really all goes back to the home and the communication
I really do.
in the home.
Yes.
And I think that the more you can communicate and open up those channels of communication, whether it be about a movie or a TV show or, just
that they're
about
watching together,
they're sharing moments and things like that, you can really open the conversation to talking about more important topics and more important issues.
So it's not permitted to be brushed under the carpet. It's not permitted to live in that darkness. It has been exposed in a way that is not threatening, in a way that is welcoming, in a way that is honest, just as in a way as though we're going to talk about where we're going to go on vacation, what we're going to make for dinner, what kind of sport, what's our schedule. We're not going to put an emotional valence on this or that will make it seem that it is a taboo conversation.
Yeah, like you don't have to have okay, we're going to sit down and have the talk, whatever that talk is.
Exactly.
It can be a little more conversational and laced into the everyday life, because the reality is that the child is going to try whatever they're going to try.
They're going to try it, guys.
Whether it's
They've
a
already
cigarette,
done it.
or whether it's a drink, or whether it's a bag of dope at that
Absolutely.
level, they're going to try something. So if they know that once they've tried it and they have feelings about that experience, whether it be guilt, shame, remorse, or they
how about if they love it? I like it.
Or like I loved it, or like that was exciting.
Nobody would ever do it if it was bad.
You know, if they know that those channels of communication are open, then they can go back and continue the conversation. And I think that that's what's very important, because everything's available on the internet. I mean, someone can watch a movie, learn how to shoot a bag of dope, smoke a crack pipe, like it's not an issue, or go online and find out information.
So we have to equip our children with the rest of the story. Is what I like to call it, because just like you know, anybody who's trying to sell you anything is only going to show you the good side of it and the benefits of it. But they're not showing you the side effects, and the side effects are not just personal physical side effects. How it affects your heart. You were telling me earlier.
Oh my gosh!
Every drug, the first thing it affects is your heart, and then there are continual ramifications that go on, but also how it affects your life, your relationships with your family, your and this is why the story of Grace was so heartwarming and poignant and heartbreaking, because you see a woman who is in the process of recovery, and she has some choices to make, and she is working. Thank God she has a job, and she's working with another addict who you know has been brought along. She's brought along for moral support, but then she needs to, you know, it's about the day that she needs to be there in court to get her child back, and what decisions she has to make, and how difficult that is, and how you know, when you take that first hit, or when you do that you know the drug the first time, you don't say, oh well, this is going to result in me not having my child, or this is going to result in me being in a difficult situation. This is going to, you don't see those consequences. But thank God for Grace, because Grace pulls back the curtain and says, here's the truth, guys. You know, here's the rest of the story that nobody else is going to show you, but I want to show you this so you can make an informed choice. You can realize this path is not a good path. And you had mentioned earlier, it's not the fear mongering that we have heard before. It is just the truth telling, which was set people free.
And also the comfortability with truth telling and being confident.
Having an atmosphere where you don't feel
where something bad isn't going to happen to you because you've shared X, Y, and Z kind of thing. So I really believe that there would be less of a problem if people were more comfortable talking about it. Because I feel that a lot of times once the guilt, the shame, the remorse kicks in, that can fuel using a lot of time as well to kind of cover up those feelings.
Yeah, explain that a little bit more, because I think that's really critical. That is what goes on in an addiction. You know, you use, and then you know, oh my goodness, what have I done? This is terrible. I've just flushed my life down the toilet.
I'm no good. And then it's just a downhill spiral. Then you get the depression, the anxiety, I'm no good. And you as an individual can't pull yourself out of it.
Exactly. So you keep using just to kind of shut that down so that you can do your best to keep going forward, type of thing.
How were you saved?
Yeah, from it.
Oh wow! You know, once again,
I
feel like
you don't need to share that unless you want to.
Yeah, no, it's all good. I really feel like I was carried because
the Lord.
Yeah, I just you know, I had a moment where fear kind of swept through me, and I just had that moment of clarity. You know, a lot of people talk about us having a spiritual awakening, or just that fear that just was like a wind that came through my whole body, and I had a moment of like, happened? What did I do?
Wow. You can
that
see the
moment of like, I have, you know, done my best to cover up this lie for so long, and now I'm exposed with the truth, and I was just like, oh my God.
And that just came out of nowhere? That
came out of nowhere.
That was just one day. And how many years ago?
And it was brief. I mean, I've been clean now 13 and a half years, so thank you so much. So it was about 14 years ago that happened. And it was in the split of a second. Of course, it felt like an eternity, but it was just that brief moment. And then, you know, I continued to use, but that was always, you know, I'm using to not kind of go where that thought was kind of taking me. And then a lot of things kind of fell apart, and I ended up going to...
The consequences started after you had clarity on that this was wrong. And
Well,
that it
I
was
always
wrong
knew,
for you.
yeah, and I always knew from the beginning. I was never brought up this way. Grew up in a very nice, upper middle class family, captain of cheerleading, kick line, star of all my school plays, honor roll, dean's list, went to a very prestigious university, did really well there. So I had all the exterior accolades, that everything was okay.
It was perfect. There's no problem here.
Of course.
I can do whatever I want. I've succeeded at everything I've already done. And why should this be any different?
And that was one of the reasons why I had such a difficult time sharing.
Right.
Who
now
the
you're
heck's
vulnerable.
going to understand?
Yes,
Right.
exactly.
Now you're vulnerable. Here's a part of me where I made an error, but yet you overcame it.
Yes.
And you found a way out.
I did, but I can say it wasn't by my choice. I ended up having an opportunity. I moved back to my parents' home, and they told me that I had to go to, detox and treatment and rehab, and I just went just to get away. Because I was
from
from everything that was happening, the atmosphere. I didn't know what I was going to do, so I was like, you know what, I'm just going to go away. 3 hots on a cot. I don't have to think about anything. I can it's like I saw it as a vacation.
Sure,
right? Yeah.
I saw it as vacation. Okay, I'm just going to go away, and then I'll deal with all this when I come out. And I think that that's the pattern of addiction. And
was that your first detox or no?
It was my first detox. My first time in rehab. It did stick. Yes.
And it was for how long were you there?
Detox was about 5 days. I came out for about 2 weeks, and I was using again because of the insurance and the Medicaid, and that's a whole nother complicated issue. And then I was able to get back into a treatment facility, and I was there for about 3.5 months.
Okay.
So I did 3.5 months in treatment, and then I did a year of outpatient afterwards.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I continued with that
so
for the year.
What would you tell people? I mean, anybody out there, about that? I mean, for heaven's sakes, it changed your life forever.
It did. It did. And like I said, I didn't go with the intention to get clean. And I think that that's a big misconception with a lot of parents that I talk to. The addict or the person that's using has to want to stop. They have to make that decision on their own.
That's right.
You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink.
Absolutely.
And all you can do is provide the opportunities for that to happen.
Yes.
Like they have to grab that brass ring.
Yep.
Exactly.
Because I went to treatment. I didn't go to get clean, and here I am 13 and a half years later, clean.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I was there till about after a month, and I was married at the time and using with my partner, so it was always him. He was the one with the problems, very easy to point fingers. Exactly. I was working, I had a job.
Right, and so
I had everything together.
Addict, of course
Exactly,
not.
I'm functioning.
Right, because look at me outside. Right.
Exactly, all the rationalization, all the denial.
The
But it wasn't until I was there for about a month that I was like, maybe I do have a little bit of a problem.
The truth began to seep in.
Exactly.
Because you were free from all those
people
that were
I had
telling you
no
lies.
triggers.
Right. There was that distance that we need
No
to have.
people, places, and things. I wasn't
Exactly.
using. I didn't have any triggers, like you said, which really gave me an opportunity to start to kind of look at myself and to have a look.
Honestly.
See.
Yes.
That's what was happening.
What are we dealing with here?
Exactly.
Right. And moving forward from that, you once you kind of submitted to that truth, once you had the liberty to be free from the triggers, and you were in a safe place, and you submitted to the truth, then what did you discover? You discovered that you wanted to be, free from this. You can see it for what it was, I would imagine.
Yes and no.
Okay.
I
how did
knew
work
that
for you?
I knew that I didn't want to live how I was living.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's important.
However, I was still unable to imagine a life without drugs and alcohol.
That is a key statement.
Yes.
Because we just think, well, I need to have this.
Yes.
How
why
else am I
can't,
gonna
I can get out and I can just do it on the weekend.
'Cause
Or I can just drink at a birthday.
Still
or,
rationalizing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So once again, it's a process coming to, going through recovery and kind of having those moments of seeing things. I knew I didn't want to live the way we were living and with the drama and everything that was happening, but I didn't know what a life without drugs and alcohol would be like. And I was very scared
Of course.
of the unknown and not knowing, and what would
Stepping
that
out
be?
in faith.
So what is a life without drugs and alcohol like, girlfriend? I want to hear.
It's amazing.
It's amazing. Tell me.
I mean, I'm here in Iowa at the
you're
Landlocked
so
Film
beautiful.
Festival with a movie.
You are stunning.
Inside and
It
out.
radiates
So
from-
fun to
Thank
meet
you.
It
you.
radiates from within.
Yes.
You can
Thank you so
see
much.
This purity and this truth.
Yes.
And
Yeah,
this
thank you.
This grace.
Yes.
that comes
Totally,
out of you.
totally. I mean, it's been such a ride.
Yeah.
I always say my life is never what I thought it would be.
Yes.
Right? Growing up, how I thought it would be.
Sure.
However, my life is nothing that I've ever could have imagined.
It's above and
it's
beyond.
beyond
Above and
my
beyond.
wildest dreams. I mean, the fact that I got to make a movie
Isn't that amazing?
with all of these amazing actors.
This girl
and
from Long Island.
Yeah,
you know?
totally. So it's been fantastic.
It is.
Yeah.
And so what the enemy, what the addict, what the addiction, whatever, meant for harm, thought, this addiction's like, I'm going to get her, I'm going to bring her down, I'm going to destroy her. You can now see that God meant it for good.
Oh, for sure.
Because you were able to, you were in that dark place, and you did find a way, because God makes a way where there doesn't seem to be a way, and you had a way, and it's a narrow path, but you took that path. Your path narrows, but your opportunities, your horizons broaden.
And I love that you bring this up because going back to being willful and I'm going to make the plan and this is how it's going to be.
Your own
and
energy.
Tell you mine,
exactly.
right.
Like I would have never been able to plan
Right.
how I got into treatment, coming out of treatment. And even when I got out of treatment, I didn't know if I was going to
What were
stay
you gonna
clean,
do?
but
I
I just kept showing up every day, like in grace, and
Right.
just every time I was in a situation, like, okay, so
I have a choice.
I have a choice. What's the right thing to do? And I mean, it was so simple, just living like moment to moment. Not even what am I doing tomorrow?
Right.
Just like,
It's like
okay,
right now,
so am
right.
I going to drink coffee or tea? Well, I've already had enough caffeine, so I think I'm going to do a decaf tea.
you go.
Decisions as simple as that. So just really taking it moment to moment and like, what's the next right thing?
But just
The
to
next
touch
right
on that
thing.
for a second, decisions as simple as that we all make every day. I mean, just to take your intense experience, but it's true for every human being.
Totally.
Whether they're a heroin addict or not.
Exactly.
Whether they
Decisions
overcome that, for sure.
Oh, you know what? I'm just so excited. And you were going to talk about. You heard about a place that is just awesome, Teen.
Right.
Oh,
Teen
yes, please, yeah,
Challenge.
share about
so
this.
because your movie Grace, again, it paints a portrait of the human experience and of the devastation that drug addiction can cause, and how do we get out of it? And you even mentioned that you want to share this with which I think is amazing and wonderful. We
Yes,
should get
the
this out
school
there,
curriculum.
get the conversation going in the
We'll help
schools.
with that.
Yes,
Oh, awesome.
exactly.
Thank you.
Welcome to the education state.
Fantastic. Awesome.
And to be on the teaching circuit and the lecture circuit for colleges and universities, which is exactly where you need to be
Right.
to get this
And
conversation
even
going.
younger.
Well, right. Well,
a degree.
as we are led. But now, what is the solution? How did you get out? And you mentioned treatment. Well, we had a similar experience. We were working with a young lady who was a heroin addict, and we led her to water. I mean, there was a team of educators and parents, and we led her to, but she didn't.
She didn't drink.
She didn't drink her water. Right. She didn't want to take that. So she's still back out there using. But what we found in the process that I'd like to share with you and with our viewers is this extraordinary organization called Teen Challenge. And Teen Challenge is a faith-based organization, and it is designed to help young people and people who are no longer teenagers, adults, find that path, find that way out of addiction. It is you do have to want to go, and it is all over the nation. There are centers, there are men's centers and there are women's centers.
Fantastic.
Yeah, from sea to shining sea.
Yeah.
And they're mostly paid for by people who they have they have private funding, from church groups and from others
Which means that's nice.
which is nice, right? Which, because to address your problem of, you were only in for 5 days, and then because of insurance, you couldn't stay. This is paid for. But there is a upfront fee, just kind of you need to buy into this. So there's an upfront fee, a registration fee. But people can go, and it is a year long, in many cases, a year long.
Which I think is important. You need that year.
Residential.
You
I just
need
know
that.
it.
Yeah, you do. And that was also another reason why telling the story of Grace was so important, is because for me as the addict in recovery, my first year clean was the most difficult.
Right.
It was more difficult for me than any day using and trying to find ways and means to get more. I mean, it was the most difficult for me because it was the first time I had to face all of my fears, all of my emotions, and I didn't have a drug and I didn't have a drink
Anything
to
to cover
hide
it,
behind,
right.
and I had to face it, and I still had to show up for life.
Yeah,
I still had to show up for work.
Right.
And I still had to show up for life that was happening plus everything that had already happened. And
Right.
it was extremely overwhelming at times, and I found that a lot of people close to me, they didn't know how to talk about
Support
it
you,
or support
right,
me.
right.
And so that's why that first year clean is such a fragile
Right.
moment in time,
Right.
because for the addict to get clean is huge.
Right. The physical addiction is gone.
Yes.
Now there's the wreckage.
Yes,
And now
to
there's
be
a
able
how
to
to live
process
well.
that,
Right.
and to move through that. So I think that the fact that this Teen Challenge program is a year is fantastic, because the year is
The key.
the most difficult.
So you
the most
touched on
vulnerable.
It is
something,
key.
the idea of, is the reason we get started on that addiction out of insecurity, out of, you talked about the covering up, how you really felt. Is it because life is just so overwhelming and nobody's listening, or because you have so much creativity and don't know what to do with it? I know sometimes people drink because they're so creative, they just have to numb themselves essentially.
Right.
So what is some of the roots why people choose to do it daily, would you say? I mean, outside of the
Sure.
chemical, we know it's
Right.
physical.
Yeah.
Right.
Your body wants that feeling again. That's a huge part of it.
Yes, yeah, and I think that that's what happens with a lot of prescription.
Which is, by the
drugs
way,
is a
the
physical-
biggest
physical
growth
addiction.
factor in the last 3 years
Yeah.
ever.
There's
I mean,
more people addicted to prescription drugs.
And then once the prescriptions run out, then they'll go to heroin and
Oh.
other things, and that's why heroin is really on the
Oh.
rise,
That's why it
kind of
is.
thing.
And
That's
ultimately, so speak to the personal reasons, and then we can
Sure.
see to the bigger factors. We
Yeah,
can
of
really kind of
course.
talk a little bit about that.
I mean, I can speak from my personal experience.
Sure.
I was bullied growing up, so I had
Okay.
a lot of those feelings and really kind of dealing with a lot of that. And I can,
Yeah.
share when I was at my first, like keg party in
Right.
junior high, and I had my
Oh, we
first
all
drink.
were,
I was
right.
just like, oh, I don't have to feel that anymore, and I
Yeah.
can curse you out, and I don't care about
Right,
this, and
right.
these people can.
No consequences.
Exactly,
Yeah,
and
that's
I
right.
just felt free for the first
Right,
time
no
of all of
inhibitions.
that.
How
like,
That's what
interesting.
alcohol
Liquid
does.
courage.
Exactly. Yeah, I felt like liberated, and this is great.
Girl,
Yeah,
let's do this again.
totally.
Right, yeah.
So, and I can say that the progression kind of just went from there of constantly looking for something to not have to feel that for
Right,
myself
right,
growing
right.
up.
How
And when
do
you're
I
a child, I
make
mean,
it
you're
release?
dealing with it from a child's perspective. You don't really have a grasp on the whole picture.
Right,
So,
right.
it works. So then that must be the thing to do to
Right.
not have to feel that. So that was huge
And you
for
see
me
other
personally.
people drink, and society says, "Oh, well, we're just going to go have a cocktail." So it didn't seem like it was something so out of the ordinary. It was just
Well,
you
it's
just knew-
normal, of course,
Right.
but that root, that is a root, and I think is extremely common.
It
Oh,
is.
yeah, for
It's-
Face
sure.
it.
It's the
It took
human
me years to
experience.
feel somewhat secure with myself,
Right,
right? I mean,
right.
let's face
As
it, we're
all
all
of
there,
us,
and,
for sure.
and alcohol does do that. And it drops walls, and it can be used maybe somehow for good. I mean, if you have
Social lubricant.
yeah, whatever. But gosh, that message, I would love to get out to the kids.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah.
And also, I truly believe that the disease of addiction, it's spiritual in nature.
It is.
And I think just as humans and as beings, like we all have a spiritual void that we're looking to fill.
So
Yes. true.
Whether it be with drugs, alcohol, shopping, sex,
A
gambling,
boyfriend,
food, a person,
yes.
anger, drama,
Right,
jealousy. Right. A lot of people get
all
a
of
charge
those.
from that.
Exactly.
That kind of makes them feel secure in the world.
Right.
And
Filling that emptiness inside
exactly,
of them.
exactly.
That spiritual
And-
void.
Yes. And so, the longer that I stay clean and the more I'm kind of on this journey, the more I really see that that's really what it's about. It's
Right.
not
Bottom line.
about the drug.
root.
And
Right.
that's
It's
really
the
what the root is.
And
Yeah.
we all what we know now is it's a God-shaped space, and it's
Yes.
meant to be filled by God. and
yeah,
God
we're
alone.
spiritual beings having
We
a human
are.
existence.
Yeah, we're
That's a human experience.
We're body and we're soul and we're spirit.
Yeah.
Right. So we have this inner spirit being that can be fed only by God. And so that's a personal journey that each person
Yeah.
needs to discover for themselves, and needs to just really seek Him. Seek God and find Him.
Let's bring
the Lord
a
our
little
God.
bit of God back, and in an unreligious sort of sense.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
the idea of
Not religion.
spirituality, and it's okay. We can talk about God even though we
Yes.
can't pray to Him at
Or you
school.
can, and if you feel uncomfortable, you could say like good orderly direction,
That's
or
right. Whatever you want,
like
yeah.
what
As you
universe, or
understand Him.
something outside of ourselves,
Right, something bigger than
whatever
us
that is that you
to
believe.
address that
Yeah.
need, and we will find that if we seek with all of our heart, we know that He will be found by us, which is a truth. So,
Yeah.
which is extraordinary. So yeah, once people recognize that there is a spiritual component to us, and not pretend, that is another little thing that people tend to shove under the carpet.
Yes.
Oh, you don't need that. Let's
Yes,
just educate your
exactly.
brain and get you
Yes.
physically healthy and make sure you're eating right. But wait a minute, what about my spirit? There's a hunger there.
It's true.
And you know, the
Perfect.
eyes, there are
It's
lies
exactly
that
what
say
the bottom line
feed
is.
it with this, but you need to really feed it with God. And whether that is go to your family's church or seek out God for yourself. You know, He does say, if you seek me with all of my heart, all of your heart,
You'll find me.
I will be found by
Yes.
you. And He's not lying when He says that. So just you know, just going all out for Him and discovering who Jesus is and who, or for me, it's Jesus Christ. But for other people, they continue to seek until they find the truth, the whole
Yeah.
truth, and nothing but the truth.
Yeah.
So, well, thank you for sharing that
Of course,
important
yes,
component
yes.
Of the
And yeah, I think
story.
once again that's part of recovery and
is.
addiction that people once again feel uncomfortable to talk about too,
Right.
and I think that that's a little bit with our culture.
And because there's such a
especially in the United States.
There's a lot of religions that oppress people. Let's just
that's a
let's
good
just
point.
come out and say it.
Yep.
A lot of religions say, well, here's my list of rules.
Right.
If you check all of these
Right.
boxes, then you can
Then
then
you
you're
fit
good.
in.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Then you're in our
Yeah.
club. But that's
Yeah.
really not.
No, not at all.
That's not what it's about, really. It's about a faith journey,
Yeah.
a personal journey.
Yeah.
C.S. Lewis knew it, J.R.L. Tolkien knew it, many others throughout history
And
knew it.
regardless, we're all trying to get back to that same, like you said,
Of
place
course.
with God. I
Of
mean,
course,
that's why we're
yeah.
here on the earth. And that's why you did your film, You're Walking in Your
Yes,
Destiny.
yeah.
And so I just speak that you are an inspiration to women
You
and
are.
girls your
Thank
age,
you.
you know,
You
that you're inspiration. That's what you're doing.
You're a
Thank
truth
you.
teller.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're a truth
You
teller.
are a
Keep
truth
it up,
teller.
girlfriend.
I am.
That is she's so refreshing.
So many times people ask me questions. I'm like, do you really want
wanna
my
know the
thoughts?
truth?
Do you want
Right.
my
Yeah.
the truth?
Yeah.
Because the truth will set you free. There are people that don't like the truth, though.
Of course,
Right?
and that's a process of a reveal for them
Right.
as well. You know,
Right.
I feel like life is almost like an onion. There's like so
That's
many
right,
layers
right.
that we're
This is
peeling
true.
away.
Keep looking for
so-
truth. You'll
Yeah.
get there. You'll get there. And that's a personal. And then we also know, I mean, just to touch on like the business aspect of it. And you had said this earlier that, oh, why is there so much addiction? Well, there's greed. I mean, if there's money
Oh,
someplace.
it's a multi-billion-dollar
yes,
industry.
Go ahead. Yes, here's
I
our
mean,
little addicts. Now
yes.
we can treat them. Let me take all of your money
Yes.
to do it. And are they
Yes.
going to get better? Well, not this month.
Yes.
But maybe, you know, can you
Yes.
give us another $8,000?
Yeah.
The next month we'll
Yeah.
see.
Yeah.
And so there is that. So we have to be aware of that. Just pull the veil back on that. Like,
Yeah.
you know, that's not even necessary. You know, you just keep going for the truth. You will find it. You will get there. Surround yourself with people
Yes.
who are not going to lie to you
Right.
and
Yes.
say, oh,
Yeah.
this is not a problem. There's no worries about that. You just go do whatever you need to do. You know, those are not the people that
Yeah.
you need to have as friends.
Right.
You need to have
Yeah.
the people that are willing to be honest with you. Now, tell us about this acronym of grace.
Oh, sure.
Because this goes right to this point.
Yes.
So,
Well,
There's
from
a
the
5-step,
beginning,
right.
yeah, from the beginning, I knew that I wanted to use this as a vehicle to be available as an educational material for
Right, for
schools
sure. I
or
think it
jails,
needs to be.
institutions, you know, to assist people in starting this conversation.
Exactly.
Let's watch an entertaining film and talk about it afterwards and what our thoughts are and just kind
a
of
very well done film, I might say.
and just, you know, and just like ease into that conversation. Like we shared earlier, it doesn't have to be like we're sitting down to have the talk now.
Right,
You know,
right.
we
Let's
can
get all serious.
yeah, we can be casual, we can laugh, we can cry while
Right,
we're talking
right,
about it. It's
sure.
all good. So I knew that from the beginning, but I just wasn't really sure how that was going to kind of come together. And so then I started thinking about, I would love to be able to speak at the university level,
Right.
to screen the film and share my experience, but outside of that, I was like, what am I giving these young people? I knew for me, being at the university was such a crucial time for me. And I
It's
feel
a
like
transformative time.
I totally could have been grabbed if someone heard what I
Tempted you,
was saying or you know, kind of helped in that moment. And I feel that that's where I can be very
If
impactful
they
in sharing
heard what
my
you
story.
were saying, if they would have heard what you were saying.
Yes.
Because there tends to be the glossing over of it.
Yes, like what I was writing in my creative writing.
Yeah. By the way, I'm a drug addict. Can you
assignments,
not
things like
understand
that.
this?
Like there were a
Right.
lot of like,
Yeah. How can you not see that I'm crying out for help? Yes.
Exactly.
Right. 20-year-olds
So,
do that.
yeah.
Right. And we need to help them at that
Yes.
point. So speak to
And
this, Grace.
Exactly. So, you know, I've really been thinking about, like, I'd love to screen the film and share my story, but what else? What else can I give them?
Tools.
Because, exactly,
Right.
because the reality is that it's not about the person that's already using, because they have avenues that they can get help and treatment, but it's for the person that hasn't started using yet or doesn't know that they're an addict. Those are the people that I'm interested in really touching with this film. And so I started thinking of, there could be, what about an acronym for GRACE? And we can kind of speak on that topic, which would be gratitude, respect, accountability, community, and empowerment, and how we can use those key words and key phrases to continue a life of recovery.
Right. So gratitude, being grateful every day for everything
we have,
good and bad.
Yes.
Thank you for the traffic ticket. Thank you for,
exactly.
And not
every
using
moment
it.
is a lesson.
It's a blessing, right? And then respecting ourselves enough to say, hey, is that a right choice for me right now? And respecting one another.
Yes.
And not trying to exalt ourselves above others or this false, I'm not worthy. I mean, there's just this mutual, an atmosphere of mutual respect. And then the A stands for
acceptance.
There's that
accepting.
Flows from respect.
Starts with yourself.
Accepting yourself.
For who you are.
Accepting
the truth.
Accepting the moment, the situation that you're in. Accepting that maybe you did make a mistake.
Or
that you did do the right thing, just accepting everything as it is for what it is, kind of thing.
For what it is,
yes.
And then the C stands for community. Because
coming
no man
together.
is an island.
Yes.
Exactly. And we need to support one another and speak
And if we
truth to
see
one
someone
another.
who's struggling, reach out to them.
Exactly. Don't just say, well, I'm sorry, it's happy hour, I have to go, and hey, good luck with that. We have to just reach out to people in that moment and not just think that we're just doing a small thing, but if there is a need, have the courage just to say, how can I help you out with this, but not get pulled into maybe some of the lies.
And also to show up and reach out and not be fearful of doing it. Because I also feel like a lot of times people could be like, this is happening, but I don't know what to say, or it's not my place to say something.
It's not my place.
And so I think as a community to come together and be like, no,
it's okay.
It is okay to say something.
Yes,
and
you know what? We don't have to be politically correct every second.
Exactly.
Yeah, we toast to that.
Exactly, right?
Cheers. Anyways,
totally.
And then the E stands for empowerment.
Yes.
So once we have this attitude of gratitude and this mutual respect for ourselves and for one another, and this acceptance and this community, now we're empowered because we all have a purpose, right? I mean, nobody was born just random, haphazard, whatever.
Yes.
We have a purpose. We're all born for a purpose and a destiny, and we know that in our hearts. Every little girl, every little boy has a dream that they want to fulfill.
Absolutely.
And some, when we're little, maybe it's to be a mermaid. But as we grow, it's a good one. As we grow, maybe we get dreams that we just know that this is why we're here.
Yes.
We're here to love each other and to move the ball forward in a way.
Yeah.
And then we're empowered once we're free of those addictions.
Totally.
We have the supportive community. We're empowered to step out and move, take the next right step towards that dream.
Yeah.
And then aren't we always surprised at how it just
the doors that open.
Right.
Yeah.
It just
my
moves
God.
forward
You're
from
an example of that.
Yeah, it's just like there's such a generosity of spirit that shows up surrounding it when you're following your truth.
Oh,
it really is.
Yes. That's awesome.
It's really,
it's so
and
true.
I had so many moments along the way making the film, and it was just from people, showing up on set to be background, to contributions, to the weather holding out and not raining on our day to shoot outside. I was just constantly stunned by the generosity of spirit. But I find that comes when there's passion and enthusiasm.
Yes.
People are attracted and gravitate towards passion and enthusiasm.
Yes,
and
that
so
there is a good thing that's happening here. There's a truth that's happening here, and people want to
be a part of it.
They want to be a part of it.
Yes.
They want to be a small part of a big project.
Yes.
And it's just going to all move forward. One of the things, so getting back to specifics, we've talked about big stuff. Now let's get back to specifics, because there are a lot of people that are going to watch it that are filmmakers, and they have a dream, and they and it may not be a filmmaking dream. Maybe they want to write something. Maybe they want to finish a degree. Maybe whatever they want their dream is. Tell us a little more about those ups and downs, because even you did say it was tricky to get things done, and sometimes you said, why am I doing this? But then there were those moments that the support came just when needed. I think, for example, in the short documentary, that the set for the husband, that beautiful Manhattan apartment. How did you get that set? And how? I mean, these little details. Life is in the details.
Yes.
So how did you get, for example, how did you get that set? That was
once again, generosity of spirit.
That's
that
right.
was a friend of mine's loft space.
Okay.
And
a very beautiful space.
Yes,
Yeah,
stunning.
very, yeah.
And we needed a location, and I had been contacting real estate brokers because I wanted kind of a loft space. And
Something
there
that
were,
said money in New York.
exactly.
Right.
And then you had to get it furnished, and they were like, well, you have permits with buildings, and I was just, it was like a can of worms. And then I was talking with my friend Sean, he was like, oh yeah, well, I'm moving into a new loft space. He was a hairdresser, so it's kind of like where he cut hair and everything. He's like, I'm doing this loft space salon, and I'm moving into the space next week. He's like, you can totally shoot
that,
there.
right?
And I was like, really? I was like, oh my God. And so that's how we got
One
that
of
space.
those just random conversations, events, and the timing.
Yes, the timing.
You know, it wasn't. You know, I've heard the phrase, sometimes God is not early, but he's never late.
Exactly.
You know, it's I call them a just-in-time delivery system.
Totally.
Right. If you need something, you know you're going to need it in the future. Don't worry about it. It'll show up.
Yeah.
But you kept moving forward with it.
Yeah, and I kept sharing about where I was at with people, and I think that that's also
the honesty.
Is huge, and it's such a contrast from being an active addiction is like asking for help.
Right.
And sharing with people like, hey, I'm working on this film. Do you know anybody? I'm looking for this location. And I'm translating this now into, making a film. But, reaching out and asking people and sharing with people where I was at.
Right.
Once again, everybody was very moved by the passion and enthusiasm by the project and wanted to be a part of it in a small way. So when I was sharing, they were like, oh yeah, contact so-and-so. And my friend Sean was like, oh, wow, I'm moving in next week. And I had no idea that he had gotten a new space.
And it was just perfect for you.
Exactly.
And it's a memorable visual, and it makes a statement, and it communicates a message in a way that is very effective.
Yeah.
And, even the space that you shot in the restaurant, I heard you say earlier,
yes.
You used to work there.
Yes, that is actually
Really?
the diner location.
Yeah,
it's in my hometown. It's an old train car dining
It looks like
diner.
a train car diner.
And it's actually the diner that I worked in my first year clean, which was a lot of the inspiration for the film.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it's very much a homecoming
Wow.
experience for me making
You're
the film.
Oh wow, I was here, and now look at the fruit. You just kept growing.
Yes.
And this is extraordinary. How did you get? And who's the man who played Johnny again?
Zach Grenier, he's on The Good Wife.
He is on The Good Wife. One
Phenomenal
of my favorite.
actor,
hilarious.
stunning. Yes.
He is so good, and I even did see him on old reruns of Law and Order. And
of course.
He's been on several episodes of Law and Order. How did he get involved in the project?
He got involved because he was actually in director Chris Ordle's feature Earthwork.
Oh, that's right.
And so he was one of the cast members in that film. And, Chris and I, we really spent a lot of time brainstorming, especially for Johnny, because we really wanted an actor that wasn't going to be your stereotypical diner owner, or at least East Coast, the sweaty, burly guy that's
He's
just
from
gruff.
Jersey, though.
He is from Jersey. Yes,
Yeah.
he is. But we kind of wanted to steer away from that because we felt that Johnny was very complex. Here he is. Just like Janice in a situation, doing his best to do the next right thing, and it's not necessarily going his way. So we really wanted someone that would be able to capture the gruffness as well as trying to do the next right thing, and to be able to show that fine line of wanting to do it but not being able to,
not having the foundation or the strength to see it through because of his
to
issue.
see the big picture.
Right. But he's just trying to put out little fires. And that's amazing. And that is, I'm so glad that he was part of the project because he brings a gravitas to that.
Totally
that is extraordinary. And it was through your relationship with your director, who was the workshop guy, right? Was the director the workshop guy?
No, actually, he came on a little bit after we were workshopping it.
How did you find the director then?
I actually met him through Alicia Reiner. She plays Bridget. She had been on the festival circuit with her short film Speed Grieving Project.
There you go.
Which was inspired by her father's time during his battle with cancer. And so she was doing the festival circuit with her film Speed Grieving, and Chris was on the festival circuit at the same time with his film Earthwork, and so they connected during that time. And then when Alicia and I were talking about directors and I was taking meetings, she's like, why don't you reach out to Chris? I think it might be a good fit. He's very much a kind of legacy narrative filmmaker, and his film Earthwork was about a gentleman that does crop sculptures in Kansas City that came to New York back in the 80s to kind of do a crop sculpture in New York.
Now I'll have to see it.
Yes.
Now I'll have to see this.
Yes,
This is
stunning
the
portrayal.
next right step for us is to take a look at some of these
it was a
amazing
wonderful
short
film.
films.
Yeah.
Right. I will definitely look into it.
Yeah.
Well, that is fantastic. And how did you get Miss Reinhardt?
Well,
You knew her clearly.
Yeah, I knew her.
Right.
And,
as a friend.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, right.
I feel like she just came on board from the beginning because when I sent her the script, she's like, oh my God, I love it. When are we shooting this? And I was so
Isn't it
excited.
amazing how I think she must have been prepared all along to want to do something, and then you were just...
And it came in at
right,
that time.
at the right
and
moment.
the timing when we were shooting, it
Right.
just kind of all
came
together.
Because she's a very busy person, you know, and so it's hard to get people at the right place at the right time. This is just an extraordinary story. The whole idea that you decided to step out and you were moved to do something that was right, and then you just kept going with it, and all this supply came along step by step by step, and now we have this project that's been in the works for 4.5 years, and has now come to fruition, and you've just started showing it on the circuit starting in May. So now your next step is, thank you very much for being here, which is wonderful.
Thank
it's
you
wonderful.
so
And then your
much.
next step, you're going in September to other film festivals.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Oh, sure. Actually, September's going to be a busy month. We're going to be at Naperville Independent Film Festival outside of Chicago. And then from there, I'm headed to the Wine Country Film Festival out in California,
Valley.
Napa.
Okay.
And then from there, I'm possibly going to be going down to LA for a film festival. We're not sure on the logistics of that.
We'll see.
And then I'm on to the Golden Door Film Festival in Jersey City after that.
Yeah, bring it back home.
Yes.
Bring it back home. Wonderful. And this film has already won a few awards.
Yes.
So tell us about those.
Oh, wow. It was amazing. We won Best Drama at Cape Fear Independent Film Festival in North Carolina.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That is extraordinary.
Yeah, it was
best of all of the things, you guys won Best Drama.
Yeah, it was just such an honor. And
nice work.
so moved by that. And then we won the Audience Award for Best Short at the Long Island International Film Expo, which that was very dear to my heart, because I felt like if the audience is awarding this, then
they're receiving it.
They're receiving the conversation, and they're open to that conversation. So I was like, okay,
it's
exactly.
the fullness of time for us to start talking about this. Oh, this is amazing.
So
well, our wish is that you will have many more awards to come.
Oh, thank you so much.
We're in agreement on that, and we just hope that this is just springboards into something, and that many lives can be touched by it in a very positive way to help us not be deceived by these these temptations, and that we can see just the full picture of what submitting to that means. But then also, I think just the beautiful story is the overcoming. Is the overcoming. I just want to close with this concept of how we love people and treat people in a society that have overcome, because we know that if we've overcome small little obstacles, of course that deserves some kind of laurel. But addiction is no small thing to overcome. Addiction is a depth. It is powerful, and any individual that overcomes that and is set free from that, I think is extraordinary. It just shows the depth of character that you have, and the tenacity that you have to stay and do the right thing, and just to be made whole and complete again. And I think as a society we need to recognize that, yes, there is a completeness and a wholeness.
Yes.
And just on a personal note, I always like to say, God is a God of resurrection. He's not a God that leaves us sitting in the grave.
Totally.
And I think of the 007 movie Resurrection. What a story that is. It doesn't, of course we know that as Jesus Christ is risen from the dead, but it's also a proudest supply. We may have been down and considered out, but then God is like, you're back in the game and better than you were before. You have a strength now that you didn't have. It was nascent in you before, but it's been demonstrated just the strength that you have now.
Yes,
Isn't that extraordinary? So thank you for joining us. We look forward to, we do hope you come back to our nice little
wait
state
to come
here.
back. I've had such a wonderful time here.
And we hope that you can get into some of these
University
universities.
of Iowa needs your curriculum.
Yes,
and I'll take you around to the high schools.
Fantastic.
University of Northern Iowa, Iowa State,
that'd
all
be
the small
wonderful.
colleges.
So I just think you're going to have all the right people for that too.
Fantastic.
As you're
That's
on your
awesome.
journey, you will. And it's like you don't have enough time in the day to do it all, right? Right. Isn't that how that works? It's like I have all this, but
there'll be a lot of little helpers along the way.
there will be.
It's been
Thank you so
amazing.
much for your time.
Oh my God, it's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much.
All right.
Definitely.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much. Yeah.
Thank you.